I think another thing that needs to be pointed out about the immigration waves in Greece is that their arrival has coincided with extensive, and I think it's probably unprecedented in the history of modern Greece, although I'm always wary about overstating the profundity of contemporary events. It's coincided with extensive economic, political, social, and cultural change that has been brought about by globalization. And as a result, immigration, which is a much more tangible phenomenon, you can see it, you can feel it, it's more immediate, has often been blamed for economic and social changes that have their roots elsewhere in the changes, economic shift brought on by the European Union membership, brought on by the increasing penetration of global multinational corporations in the Greek economy. Immigration has been something that's tangible, it's feelable, it's easily critiquable, and so it has garnered much more attention often than other sources of change have. Another thing I don't want to minimize here, I don't want to paint a completely negative picture. I don't want to minimize the success stories. Greek society has found some level of stasis with the first wave of immigration. Considerable respect for the work ethic of Albanian immigrants now exists. Many have assimilated and even converted to Orthodoxy. They may not be viewed as Greeks, but there are high levels of acceptance for those immigrants who have stayed and who have adopted Greek habits and adapted to Greek life. Very few societies, including the US, I might add, have dealt with mass immigration without some measure of intolerance and scapegoating. And Greek society is unfortunately no different. At the same time, I think it's important to acknowledge that the conceptual hardware of Greek society, particularly this lingering notion of politismos, has limited discussion and polarized debates. One example of this is Odysseus Tsenai, a non-citizen student of Albanian heritage in near Mykanionia, a suburb of Thessaloniki. In 2000, Tsenai was voted by teachers as the top student in his middle school. And following both custom and law, he was given the right to carry the Greek flag and lead students from the school as they participate in the annual parade celebrating Ohi Day, which is October 28th, and celebrates the Greeks saying no to Mussolini, who wanted to take over the country, and vowing to fight him, and thus inaugurated Greece's entrance into World War II in a very gallant campaign in which they drove the Italians out of Greece rapidly and well back into Albania, where they had attacked from, before the Germans swept down and basically cleaned house. The local, so anyway, in 2000, Tsenai was voted top student and given this right. The local parents' council, however, became alarmed and voted that he be stripped of the honor. The school officials and Greece's political classes, to their credit, continued to support Odysseus. But the pressure and media scrutiny became so intense that Tsenai eventually renounced his right to be the standard bearer, and he did this, he said, for the good of society. Sadly, this episode repeated itself 3 years later, upon graduation from high school. This time it was his classmates who had generally supported him in 2000, who went on strike and stopped attending class, forcing him to renounce the privilege he had earned so that order might be restored. Tsenai is a striking example of the limits of politismos, a child named Odysseus, who speaks Greek fluently, who has converted to Orthodoxy, who devotes himself to high achievement within the Greek public school system, and who would consider carrying the flag on a national holiday to be an honor, is not allowed to be Greek. Instead, he is given the message that he is Albanian and immutably so. In Greece today, I think there is a tremendous amount of agreement that the current state of affairs is untenable. There's much less agreement about the right course of action, as is evidenced by the recent controversy in February surrounding PASOK, the socialist government's proposal to grant citizenship to children of legal immigrants who were born in Greece and who have completed 6 years of education in Greek schools. The left was arguing for a much more expensive granting of citizenship rights. The right, the center-right, New Democracy, was calling for 9 years of schooling and citizenship only upon reaching adulthood. In other words, citizenship only upon reaching adulthood so that the student's citizen status couldn't be used to influence the citizenship proceedings for parents. And Laos, which is the far-right party in Greece, very small party, but some would say growing, they continued to call for basically immediate expulsion of all immigrants who did not enter the country legally. In light of this controversy, I'd like to switch gears and think a little bit about alternate usable pasts that might inform Greek society's approach to the issue of immigration. In particular, I'd like to focus on two traditions, Xenia, and I use the modern pronunciations here, from antiquity, and Pavia, a tradition that stretches from classical Greece through Byzantium. I'll then conclude with a brief discussion of the attempts of a recent film, Brasileiro, to address the immigration crisis and articulate a new vision of Greekness. Xenia, in classical culture, and I apologize to classicists and Byzantinists amongst us, I am poaching. I admit it. I am learning, so I'd be glad to hear any suggestions you have that might improve the content of this essay. Xenia in classical Greek culture is the formal relationship entered into between two members of different social groups, and it is manifested by the ritual exchange of gifts. The relation once entered into was much like kinship. As Elizabeth Belfiore explains, Xeni, the person Riza, is a foreigner, is an outsider, protect one another's children, and are who enter into this kinship agreement. It's a very complex word, as will become apparent in a moment. Protect one another's children, and were obligated to do a wide range of other services for one another, such as offering shelter and assistance, lending money, and helping one another to achieve political power. By the way, so I was reading this and was struck. Anyone know what a koubaros is or what a nonos is? Nonos is the godfather in Greece. Koubaros is the best man. And it's striking how similar the nonos in modern Greece is to the xenos in ancient Greek. Xenia also manifests itself in the practice of Filoxenia, the tradition of offering shelter and food to the traveler, the stranger in our midst. This is a particularly important ritual in antiquity, since the ancient Greeks believed that the gods circulated amongst them in disguise, so refusing to obey the practices of Filoxenia was not only an offense against one's fellow humans, it was an offense against the gods. The value of these concepts is that they offer a much more mutable notion of xenos, or foreigner, than exists in modern Greece. Xenia and the rituals associated with it allowed an outsider to transition, in Belfiore's words, from xenos in the sense of outsider to xenos in the sense of guest, to one who in the future may be addressed as friend. And that was the notion of xenos as a guest, was someone who could become potentially a philos, a friend. The term, in other words, encoded a process by which outsiders are given the opportunity to transform their status and become insiders.